Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Poly Talks. And today we will be discussing rather recent events relating to House Republican investigations, specifically into Joe Biden and his handling of classified documents. If this rings a bell, then you would be correct because this same scandal happened to Trump as well late last year, and he was raided by the FBI, in fact, due to his failure to cooperate in turning over classified documents and to the National Archives based on the Presidential Records Act, which mandates that presidents turn over such documents to the National Records Archive. So, what this means is Biden is essentially being investigated for the same reason that Donald Trump was, and they are facing similar scandals. In fact, today it was recently, the other day it was recently announced that Joe Biden had a second location of documents, and this certainly is an unwelcome distraction for Joe Biden, just as his approval rating is rising. And although Republicans do control the House, Democratic prospects are optimistic about 2024's House and presidential elections, so this is certainly unwelcome news for Biden, and he could really do without this. But another key aspect is that the Republicans, as in control of the House majority, they have the ability to launch investigations into Joe Biden and anyone else. And I wanted to provide a video today explaining the various ways that House Republicans can investigate Joe Biden and, more broadly speaking, the Democratic Party. Now, just I want to clarify, I'm not saying this is a terrible thing Republicans are doing, and I'm not saying it is. I'm not coming from a partisan lens, because Democrats did the exact same thing back in 2018, and in this modern, polarized political era, it is almost a rite of passage for the opposing party, from the president, if they are in control of the House, to launch investigations into the current administration and related officials. So, of course, we have the main scandal today regarding the classified papers. However, in the future, Republicans may pursue additional investigations as well, including, but not limited to, a potential Joe Biden impeachment. As most of you know, President Donald Trump was impeached twice during his one-term presidency, which means that it is very feasible that Republicans, in an act of political revenge, do decide to impeach Biden for either this classified document scandal or a related scandal, such as the Hunter Biden scandal, which is one of the main investigations that the Republicans are planning to launch, and perhaps the most high profile. So today we will simply be reviewing the various ways that House Republicans can investigate Joe Biden and related administration officials and people working with the administration, and what we could see as a result of such investigations, the political effect, and so on. So, the first one is the southern border. This one is quite self-explanatory. Essentially, the southern border has been, according to Republicans, overflowing with immigrants throughout the course of Joe Biden's presidency, and because of this, they claim it is destabilizing the country and resulting in an increase of crime along the U.S. southern border. And this is unique because this is actually not related directly to Joe Biden. Of course, they do blame him in part for this, but the main target of this investigation would be Health and Homeland Security official Alejandro Mayorkas, just Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas. And this is a major potential vote here because it could, while not directly impeaching Joe Biden, it could really prove a Republican point. And frankly, Democrats are very vulnerable on the issue of border control. in many ways. So this vote may not be quite as partisan as some of the others. In fact, there may even be some Democrats siding with the Republicans, more moderate Democrats, especially those that live in Texas. Although, of course, this investigation will ultimately not lead anywhere because it is highly unlikely that Mayorkas receives the conviction of the Senate, and so he may be impeached, but he will most likely not be removed from office and will continue to remain as Homeland Security. And this is not the only investigation Republicans are planning. They also might open up an old wound in the form of the Afghanistan withdrawal. And for those of you that don't know, Joe Biden announced early last year that he would be removing the United States soldiers for Afghanistan who had been serving for 20 years since the Bush era. And while this move was initially well received, poor U.S. execution led to the Taliban seizing control of Afghanistan within practically weeks. And unfortunately, the rights of Afghanistans have been severely impacted by this withdrawal, and it is simply a tragic situation and really a failure on the United States. And Republicans are potentially planning to reinvestigate this matter and find Joe Biden or other administration officials to be guilty in part for the devastation resulting from the Afghanistan withdrawal. And another, even older wound is the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic. I think of all of them, this one is probably one of the most far-fetched. I think it was in vogue for Republicans maybe a few months or years ago, even, although I think since a significant portion of the country has really moved past COVID-19, I ultimately think this may be a investigation that is pleasing to Republicans, although it probably won't gain much political capital or attention simply based on the fact that this is not such a partisan matter, and that they would not be really investigating a Biden administration official. Rather, they would simply be investigating the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic, although, of course, this investigation could have ramifications for relationship with China and other factors such as that. So it's not to be ignored, although I do doubt that the Republicans will be too keen on investigating the origin of COVID-19, although it is certainly a possibility. And then another investigation, which is quite ironic recently, is that the Republicans are planning to investigate the Department of Justice for accused partisanship and the targeting of President Trump and the raid on Mar-a-Lago, Trump's property. Although, of course, recent events have shown that the DOJ is willing to even investigate Biden, and they have treated both cases more or less equally. So I ultimately think this one is certainly possible, and I think they may investigate other sources of political bias potentially within the DOJ, although certainly a lot of the fire behind this investigation has been extinguished, of course, because Joe Biden is now being investigated by the DOJ for the same offense as President Donald Trump, although certainly there are discrepancies in the ways that these cases were handled, and Republicans may be eager to point out that while President Trump was raided and was not informed of the process, Joe Biden was treated in comparison with a much more lenient approach, although, of course, that argument has counter-arguments as well. And now we get to certainly the most fruitful investigation potentially for Republicans, and that is Hunter Biden, or Joe Biden's son. And to make a long story short, essentially, Republicans are keen on investigating Hunter Biden and potentially his laptop or other digital files. for accused corruption regarding Ukraine and other matters, and whether he is, as this article says, swayed by foreign dollars and influence. And the Republicans almost certainly will at some point launch an investigation on Hunter Biden, which could potentially have major political ramifications. Although now I want to talk more broadly about the effect of these potential investigations. And ultimately, I think we will see a similar effect to what happened in 2018. There was obviously much outcry from the left wing and Democrats regarding uh, Trump's impeachment scandal. Although ultimately what we saw in the midterm elections is while Democratic turnout was extremely high, so was Republican turnout. So you could make an argument that these investigations not only energize the base of the party that is doing the investigating, but also the base of the party that is being investigated, because both are angry over the other side's actions. And I think this will stir up much news and controversy and will certainly be a spectacle, although I do think the political impact will be relatively negligible. And I think for many of these issues, Republicans are simply making a statement or seeking to find any form of political dirt, which could, if it has a great magnitude, potentially have an impact on the 2024 election. Although, if more, surface, less nuanced details are yielded by these investigations without any major headline uh, dirt or allegations, I do not think they will have a massive political impact on 2024. Like I said, I do believe this is Republicans really making statements and digging in while they have the majority. And I think it is very similar and comparable to what we saw in 2018 Democratic investigations into Trump. But I just wanted to end the video by answering a potentially major question, which is whether House Republicans will potentially impeach Joe Biden. And this is an absolutely massive decision, obviously. I also think that this may not have such a political impact. In fact, I think it may backfire on Republicans because ultimately I think it may energize Democrats who are angry more than Republicans who knew all along that Joe Biden should be impeached. So ultimately, I believe that while Republicans may launch an impeachment trial at some point, they need to. Republicans probably will be looking for some greater motivation to do it because impeaching for the sake of impeaching, like I said, has the potential for backfire. Obviously, no impeachment trials, unless uncovering a Watergate level scandal, will result in a conviction for Joe Biden, simply due to the composition of the Senate right now. And I think that Republicans need to be very intentional with this investigation because investigating Joe Biden for a relatively mild or even trivial reason may backfire on Republicans and potentially doom their House prospects in 2024. So that is my current opinion on the House Republican investigations and how they could potentially impact the 2024 election, and ultimately what I expect to see in the coming weeks and months. As Republicans, of course, they are very handicapped. They cannot craft partisan legislation that would be approved. So I think they will, by and large, focus on these investigations, and we will ultimately wait until we observe the results of these investigations and whether they do end up having an impact on the midterm elections. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.